was very excited about this next interview. We've got Matt Davenport in the studio. Matt has just written a book. It's called First Over There. It's a story about World War II. Matt is a local attorney here in Greenville. World War One. I knew that, and I said World War II. World War One. Matt is a local attorney here in Greenville. I've known Matt forever, friends with my kids, and now an author. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me on.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Yes, sir.
All right, now I'm dying to know that. I wanted to ask you during the break. I wouldn't ask you anything because I wanted to be more inquisitive when we got on the air. But why did you write this book, and how did it come about?
Well, when I was young, I knew a veteran of the battle. He was a friend of my family, and I used to see he wore a veteran's cap at all the Memorial Day, Veterans Day parades, and on the side it had a word spelled Cantigny. I didn't know how it was pronounced. I didn't know what it meant. So years later, as an adult, I was reading a book on World War I, and I saw the word again, and I learned
Cantigny,
and I didn't know.
Cantigny,
right? And I knew it was French. I just didn't know what it was, and I learned it was a little village in France, and it was actually our first battle of either World War, our first victory against the Germans and on the Western Front. And I thought, this is historic. I looked for a book on it. I couldn't find one, so I thought maybe I could write the book. So I started researching it, looking into it, and the more I looked into it, the more I found out this is really historic. The battle was planned by a young staff officer named George Marshall, who goes on to lead the Army in World War II. And then I learned a lot of other connections. I just found it fascinating and was lucky enough to get it published.
And not only get it published, but you got a big publisher. You got St. Martin's Press, which is a big publisher, and I'm looking at the back of the book, and you've gotten reviews from people like James McPherson, who, of course, is a Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times bestselling author, who, let me read what he said about the book. He said, "This story of the men who participated in the first attack by American troops in World War I is military history at its best. The gritty, grinding, lethal nature of warfare on the Western Front comes alive for the reader in this splendid book." You also got another New York Times bestselling author, Joseph Persico.
Yeah.
Also, John Milton Cooper, who was the author of Woodrow Wilson, another Pulitzer Prize finalist. Lieutenant General Daniel Bolger, who wrote Why We Lost. And James Carl Nelson, who is an author of The Remains of Company D. Now, you got huge reviews. How did you do that?
Well, I reached out to these authors, and I've always been a bit of a history nerd, so these were names that I'd read quite a few of their splendid books, and they were all just so gracious with their time. They emailed me right back, and I just pictured them as big names with paparazzi and everything else, but I guess they're not. They're academics. So they were excited to hear from me, and McPherson was extremely gracious. He is a Civil War historian, of course. He said, I don't know anything about World War I. I'll be fascinated to learn, and he was very, very kind with his remarks.
No kidding. Did you ever meet with him or just communicate with him?
No, communicated by phone and email.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And you got that on the book cover. You got the quote from James McPherson, "Military history at its best." The name of the book is First Over There, The Attack on Cantigny, America's First Battle of World War I. All right, now, how did you do the research?
Well, now I have to say, after I started the research, I learned that it is pronounced Cantini.
Oh.
And the only way not to, and the French pronounce it Cantigny. So the only way not to say it is the way we want to say it, which is Cantigny, the way I grew up thinking it was. The research I did, I went to the National Archives in D.C. I went to the 1st Division Museum up at Cantini Park, which is named for the battle, outside Chicago, and was able to track down a lot of descendants and relatives of the veterans. Of course, none are alive anymore. The last doughboy died 4 years ago. So I was able to reach into some family collections and treasure chests that had been closed for 90 years and get letters and diaries and memoirs. So I did my best to let the soldier's voice tell their story, because it's not my story, and to try to get the story right.
Wow, that's really something. Now, your first attempt at writing?
It was my first attempt at writing, and that was the hard part. You don't know what you need to know until you start to write it. I'd done years of research, and as soon as I sat down to write the first paragraph, I realized I don't know what the weather was like this day. I don't know when dawn was. So then I learned what I needed to know. And the North
How do
Carolina.
how do you find out all that stuff?
Well, you have to go back through records and weather reports, and you have
So
to go through.
there are weather reports of what took place on that date, and
There actually
what year
were.
was it?
1918. yeah.
1918.
It was actually 97 years ago today. It was May 28th, 1918.
No kidding.
And the North Carolina connection, I was able to track down, make contact with Justice Sam Ervin IV, who's Sam Ervin's grandson.
Yeah, who's now on the North Carolina Supreme Court.
Supreme Court, that's right. And he was very gracious with his time because his grandfather, future U.S. Senator Sam Ervin, fought as a private in the battle.
So he was Sam Ervin was there.
He was there. He fought in the battle. He went back and forth through no man's land about 5 times carrying supplies to the frontline troops. He was shot by a German machine gunner.
No kidding.
Taken back to a hospital. And the next battle at Soissons, he earned the Distinguished Service Cross for taking a German machine gun post.
Never knew that about Sam Ervin.
And at the Meuse Argonne, he was injured again, and he earned 2 Silver Stars and the second highest award for bravery. And no one ever knew it because he never campaigned on it, never talked about it.
Isn't that something? All we know about Sam Ervin is that he was the country U.S. Senator from North Carolina who chaired the Watergate Committee.
That's right. That's right. He's just a country lawyer, as he said.
Now, did you interview Rufus Edmiston, who was his understudy on the Watergate Committee?
I did get to talk to him, yes.
Did you?
And he was just as surprised about he knew he had a war history, but didn't know much about it. And I was able to speak to him a couple of times.
Interesting. Matt Davenport, the name of the book is First Over There. Now, you're going to do a book signing tonight.
That's right, at Barnes & Noble here in Greenville at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
And they tell me it's a talk book signing, so apparently I have to talk for about 10 or 15
you're
minutes.
going to do a little lecture and talk about the book?
It's not going to be a lecture. It's going to be as brief as possible, and then I'm going to sign. So anyone that comes, you don't have to sit through a lecture, trust me.
And I'm very fortunate because you brought me a signed copy already, and I'm very honored. And I'm going on vacation next week, so I get to read it. I can't wait. Really good stuff. Well, you know what? I've known you forever. I didn't know you had this talent. But this looks like it could be a huge book.
Well, I would like to think so. I just wanted the story to get out there.
2 weeks?
It's been out 2 weeks, that's right.
Now, how did you get a publisher like the St. Martin's Press, which is a huge publisher, to take you on?
Right, yeah. I after reaching out to these authors, a bunch of them gave me some great advice. I didn't know anything, obviously. This is a hobby because my day job's a local attorney. So a couple of them put me in touch with agents, and one of the agents liked it. So he said, I think this will go to one of the big publishers, and I didn't know what he was talking about. I thought it would be University Press or something, and he came back and said, no, St. Martin's Press is interested, and I said,
And you just connected with these guys by reaching out to them and saying, hey, I want to write this book, and telling them about it.
That's right.
Sounds like somebody took you under their wing.
They were all very kind to me. I could not have done it without them, obviously.
You don't hear that story ever.
No.
You don't hear that story ever.
No.
What you hear is people that have been trying to write a book and get a publisher for decades.
That's right.
They can't get one. So.
Yes, I got a lot of no's. Don't get me wrong, but I finally got a good yes. So
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm proud of you, man. That's really good stuff. First Over There, the story of, say it again.
The story. It's the first American victory on the Western Front at Cantigny.
Cantigny. I didn't want to mispronounce it. There we got the cover on the TV there for folks. And again, come out tonight, meet Matt, and get yourself a copy of the book. Be a great Father's Day gift.
It would be.
And you can get the famous author Matt Davenport to sign it. How does that sound to you?
That sounds
famous
great.
author Matt Davenport.
Very untrue, but
No,
sounds
it
great.
may not be as untrue as it sounds right now, because it sounds like you're on your way, man. Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much.
It's great to see you here this morning.
And I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah,
on.
absolutely. I hope
Yes.
the book does great. It looks like it's going to, and I'm very happy for you.